G'day guys, how are you going, and welcome back to part 2 of the update 9.20 preview. Now the reason that the overview video wasn't the entirety of my review of this is because it turns out there's just so much that in this update 9.20 that it's really important that I think I can tell you pretty much everything that's happening with it. So today we're going to be talking about the Chinese tank destroyers, the new Chinese tank destroyers. I'm going to go through them all individually. Give you a brief overview of them and exactly how they perform in game. So guys, as I said, the Chinese tank destroyers can be broken up into three different parts, into thirds, into the low tiers, the medium tiers, and the high tiers. And this is how Wargaming has broken them up as well, and pretty much how everyone will talk about them, because they do act quite differently from tier to tier. So going straight into it, guys, if we have a look at the first Chinese tank destroyer, which is at tier 2, we are looking at the T26G FT. Now this tank has pretty good accuracy and penetration for its class. In fact, it's one of the best in tiers as well. So that is something that you can look forward to if you do play this tank. However, it's not a frontline brawler because it only has 18mm of frontal armor at best on the front of it. Don't expect the world from this tank, guys, but just remember it is a tier 2 tank, so there's not too much to say about it. It packs a punch. It's a pretty fun tank to play, so I wouldn't get too concerned about its armor situation. At tier 2, I mean, yeah, it's everyone's having a ball. Now going up to tier 3, guys, we do have the M3G FT, which is actually one of my favorite tier 3 tanks, I think now, just because it does have better visibility than its tier 2 predecessor. Also, although you don't get the armor as well, I mean, the armor on this thing is only 25mm. You can still get some ricochets as well with some funny angles, but more importantly, it gets a choice of two very capable guns, one being the 57mm Zis, which you can see here. I think it's pretty much the same as what's on the tier 5 medium tank, the T34. I can't believe I forgot the name of that one. And also the 76mm here, and I think that personally I'm going to be using the 76mm because it has better alpha damage and accuracy, whilst also being short. So it is short on penetration values, but I'm going to load this thing up with HE shells and just kind of pummel my enemy. But I won't do it too much because I'm not much of a seal clubber myself. I do prefer a bit of class. I like to play at tier 8, tier 9, tier 10. Next up, we have pretty much a carbon copy of the tier 3 Russian Su-76, but this one's pretty much on steroids, guys. It is such a fun tank to play. It is a very, very fast tank with a power to weight ratio of 25.21, or tank destroyer, I should say. Of course, it does still have some pretty poor armor at 25mm, especially at tier 4. It's not great, but it's got a good gun with absolutely huge DPM for its tier, and also it is a pretty sneaky tank as well, so you can take advantage of camouflage, which you probably can't do at tier 2 because everyone's just so clusterfucked, but tier 4 you definitely can get away with it. So it'd be a really good introduction for a lot of you guys, especially if you aren't that great at World of Tanks, I suppose, at utilizing and learning how to use these camouflage spots on maps. So here we have the second third, the two out of the 2/3 for the Chinese tank destroyers, which is between tier 5s and tier 8. So what is the main difference between the low tier vehicles and the mid tier vehicles is that when you move up the tiers, you'll find that the TDs have better mobility, topped with really good alpha damage, but you also get really bad dispersion values. So getting into mid-range fights will probably have to be the playstyle of choice, because if you try and brawl in these tanks, it's going to be quite hard. Your armor just really won't hold up. So here we have the first of the second third, and that is the tier 5 60G FT. Now this is probably one of the weirdest, I would say the weirdest looking Chinese tank destroyer. It is absolutely monstrously huge, and it has really shocking armor. So 25mm of frontal armor, same as the tier 3, and this is of course tier 5. But I guess what you get is a really high DPM, and because it's so big, Wargaming has given it a great health point pool as well, and this one has 400 hit points, which is pretty great for its tier anyway. So you shouldn't be getting one shot by those really annoying tier 5 tanks with the 105mm. You should just be able to survive if RNGesus is on your side. Now the machine's bigger size makes it sacrifice visibility, so you're not going to be able to be unseen for very long. It does have a pretty poor camouflage value. However, if you do play this tank, then what you should be doing is really taking on that medium sniper role, staying back and sniping the enemy team, because you have a pretty big gun for the tier, with a tier 7 gun on this one, which is the 85mm. So although it's not really big, I should say, it is a good gun with very high DPM. So this is a really good tank to stay back and kind of fall back when you can. And also on the plus, guys, this has pretty good gun depression as well. It has 8 degrees of gun depression, so that's pretty impressive for a Chinese tank. So continuing up the line, we have the tier 6 now, and this is the WZ131G FT, and that is just another tank that it does perform pretty similarly to its tier 5, and that is it has a pretty good performing gun with pretty good penetration at 181mm. For a tier 6 tank, that is actually pretty superb indeed, and also really great mobility, and its camouflage value is really high as well, and I think about 22%. So this is a sneaky tank. Again, guys, you really don't want to get up into the face of the enemy, because this has 35mm of armor, which is just nothing. You will be able to be penetrated by pretty much everything unless you're on a very, very weird angle and they bounce off that way. So you do need to be sneaky in this tank, use its camouflage values, use its mobility to be able to get into spots, shoot, and then get the hell out of there. So this probably won't be like these Chinese low tier tanks really probably won't be for you guys out there who might not be very familiar with the gameplay mechanics, because it won't be very easy to play. These tanks will get you into trouble if you aren't careful, so do keep that in mind. The tier 7 T34-2G FT, huge names, guys, is a very big upgrade in my opinion to the tier 6. This tank gets a 122mm gun, which has very good alpha damage at 390 damage points, I should say. Really good penetration at 192 millimeters of penetration, which at tier 7 is pretty good, and also it's very mobile as well, and gets an upgrade of armor. So although it's not amazing, it has 70mm of armor, which will protect you from quite a few HE rounds and whatnot. So I'm really happy with this tank here. It's also really sneaky again, guys. This thing has a camouflage value while stationary of 25%. So this is pretty much Swedish tank destroyer level. So yeah, I really do like this tank. It's certainly a lot better than its medium Chinese counterpart, so good balancing there on your behalf, Wargaming. And yeah, guys, I'm really happy with this tank. This is probably the point where, for me, the Chinese tank destroyers start to really shine, which is with their good guns, or their pretty big and hard-hitting guns, good mobility, and okay armor. I think at this kind of tier, this is where the Chinese tanks really become very well balanced. And if the T34-2G FT was a big upgrade over the tier 6 counterpart, then this WZ111-1 FT is an even bigger upgrade, guys. Now this thing has actually got pretty good armor, it has a really good gun in it, and pretty good mobility as well. So I'm really happy with this tank. It's probably one of my favorite tanks in the entire line, just because I think it's so versatile and it just really works. So although it's not the most mobile of tanks, it's still pretty mobile. Anyway, so what it has is it has a 130mm gun in it with really good penetration, damage per minute, and alpha damage as well. Its alpha damage, guys, is 560, which is fantastic. Its penetration is 271, and it's pretty accurate at 0.36. Its hidden dispersion values aren't amazing, guys, so do keep that in mind, but otherwise it's a really fun tank to play. Also, it's got 6 degrees of gun depression, so you can really utilize its armor and its gun depression to be able to block a lot of incoming shells with 210 to 220mm of frontal armor effectiveness. So yeah, I'm really happy with this one, guys. And here, guys, is where the Chinese tank destroyers really do shine. That is with their tier 9 and tier 10 tanks. Now these tanks are really, really good in my opinion. Now if we have a look at the tier 9 vehicle, the WZ111G FT, you can see that this tank is pretty huge, guys. It looks like a more insane ISU 152, just like a ISU 152 on the most anabolic steroids you can purchase on the market, guys. It's got a big gun, of course, of 152mm, and also, guys, it's got good armor and pretty decent mobility as well. So this will be a tank that I think a lot of people are going to pick up, just because in random games, especially, this tank is going to be absolutely incredible. In fact, a lot of people call this the rhinoceros, because it just looks like a really mean tank from the front, but from the sides and whatnot, it's probably a pretty juicy target. But anyway, guys, what you have in this tank is you have a tank with 270 millimeters of effective armor pretty much all around the front. The gun mantlet, good luck getting through that, guys. However, it does have a pretty weak lower frontal plate, so that's something you do need to keep in mind. But getting face to face with enemy tanks, you can be pretty safe that this tank is going to be pretty hard to penetrate, unless of course you're firing some premium rounds, which hopefully will get balanced out soon enough. But anyway, with 170 millimeters of effective thickness on the bottom, you can't expect to be bouncing everything. You aren't completely indestructible. You can be taken out, so keep that in mind, guys. But overall, if you're sitting back at a medium range, kind of like the mid-tier tanks, and you snipe using that 750 millimeter gun, then guys, you are going to be really racking up the damage in this tank, I can promise you that. And that brings us on to the top tier, the tier 10 behemoth, the WZ113G FT. God, it always, all these numbers are really freaking me out, guys. But anyway, this is kind of a more chilled, laid back kind of tank when you compare it to the tier 9, but in no way is it any worse. In fact, it is quite a lot better. Its upper hull, its upper casemate is effective armor of about 310 millimeters, which is pretty crazy. It does still have a pretty weak lower plate, but guys, you're going to bounce so many shells in random games in this tank. It's going to be absolutely glorious, especially if you hide that lower frontal plate. If you get behind a rock, if you get behind a ridge, you can use it to your advantage and really take out the enemy team without them really doing much damage to you. Even premium rounds will struggle against the front of this tank, guys. That's pretty special in my opinion. Now, the one big drawback I found when playing this tank is that its shell velocity is very slow, very much like the Object 268 for this patch where it actually got a buff. It's very slow, like something like 760 meters or something along those lines. So do keep that in mind, guys. This is why I think this tank is perfect, and as I said in my last video, is perfect for random battles. That's really what this is built for. It's not built for, you know, the test server or clan wars where everyone's going to be firing premium rounds at you, because it's not going to shine there. In random battles is where this tank is really gonna shine, guys. So anyway, guys, thank you so very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this video. I've got 2 more videos coming out regarding the update 9.20. So this is part 2, but there's 4 parts to this, guys. So I hope you guys do really enjoy this video. And anyway, guys, I'll catch you next time.